This episode of Simulation Nation is brought to you by Avkin, your one-stop shop for everything wearable simulator and standardized patient.
Beth Hallmark, who spent a lot of time building a Simcenter at Belmont University, and we're really going to get into kind of the nuts and bolts and what she would go back and change in terms of how she went about building this ginormous, beautiful Simcenter at Belmont.
And I will say that we've known Beth for forever.
Yeah.
And we visited her at Belmont when her Simcenter wasn't so beautiful and wasn't so shiny, right? She was asked to rub two nickels together to get $1, just like all of us.
Yeah.
And as they built a new med school, they then invested in a new Simcenter, right? Yeah. And so let's hear all the good and the bad and the ugly and the amazing things that that Beth did. I know she was one of the few people that saw this all the way through.
Yep.
And I will say from my own perspective how important that is, because I missed one architect meeting and when I built out the Simcenter, everything changed. So
and Beth said the same thing. She said you can't miss a meeting. So I think that if there is one thing, you don't even have to listen to the rest of the episode. The rest of the episode, the key takeaway here is just don't miss any meetings with the architects.
And maybe bring cookies so they like you.
I don't know. Bribe them. As we go in today's episode, we are talking to Dr. Beth Hallmark, a leader who has been shaping simulation and healthcare education for decades. Dr. Hallmark is the Director of Education at the Center for Interprofessional Engagement and Simulation and an Associate Professor of Nursing at Belmont University. Her work runs the gamut from her PhD research on faculty debriefing and student cognition to decades teaching children and family nursing to directing cutting-edge simulation programs that improve patient safety, interprofessional teamwork, and inclusive learning. She's also earned national recognition with her CHESIA, ANEF, and FAAN for her contributions in the simulation pedagogy. Let's get into today's episode and learn more about how she built her amazing Simcenter.
Hey, thank you so much, Beth, for joining us today. We're really excited to hear all about your experiences with your new Simcenter. I've been there personally myself, and it is absolutely gorgeous. The talk of the town and probably multiple towns as far as the work that's been done. So just as we're getting started, do you want to talk a little bit about how your Simcenter has transitioned from predominantly nursing to kind of more of an interprofessional lab, just so that people that are listening can get a perspective of how things have transitioned in the last couple of years?
Sure. So I've actually been at Belmont. I'm starting my 30th year, and in 2006, we moved into the Inman building where we had 3 labs. Essentially, they were just strictly lab spaces, and they didn't have AV. They didn't have, it was mainly just for skills labs. And we got a grant to help educate faculty in Tennessee about simulation. And I knew about this much. I actually got the job because I was the one faculty member back in 2006, not anymore, that was the expert in technology. And so I became the lab coordinator. And then slowly after I got my doctorate, I moved up to a director role. But we mainly were nursing labs. And then I did some renovations and added some space where we had like a 2-way mirror or 2-way window. And then we had video where we could record our simulations and show the students, let the students kind of do some actual reflection on their work. And that was mainly nursing. And we did a few IPE things, PT, did some lines and tubes and things like that. We did some stuff in social work also. And we had a small SP program, but when I say SP program, it was like I put it on Facebook on the actors site in Nashville and said, hey, you want to be an actor? And I would literally do a Sign Up Genius and send them the script and say, hey, bring this with you because it's tomorrow. Or it was very unorganized and we weren't following any standards. So fast forward to 2021, which was a long time, obviously, from 2006. We transitioned and did a lot in that time for sure. But 2021, we had a simulation task force that was started by the provost and by senior leadership at the university to look at building a simulation center that was within the new medical school building. So we just started a medical school. We're in our second, I almost said season, we're in our second cohort coming through. And so the center now is actually an interprofessional center, and it's not under one discipline, which is really, really nice. It's been very refreshing, to be honest with you. So nobody has claim to anything. We are under the vice provost for research and special projects, and we have an executive director, and then we have myself and as a director of education, and we have a director of operations and a temporary director of IPE. So they're housed kind of within us right now, but probably won't be here forever. And so that 2021 really kicked off our work to build this interprofessional center. And so there's been a lot of changes. Obviously, this is, a 60,000 square foot center that we have multiple spaces, which we can talk about later. But I hope that answers your question.
It really does. And I am refreshed to hear that it being an IPE sim space has actually been for the benefit, because a lot of times when that transition happens, it's not necessarily that way. So that's really, really great to hear. And so thinking about as you were just considering this new building, and again, it's very, very beautiful, but as you were considering this new building, did you talk about, can you talk a little bit about how you worked with the architects to make sure that the educational outcomes were aligning with the actual planning? Because that is a rub. I mean, I've even met with consultants that help with that type of work, and they say sometimes it's really hard to get what you want from the architect. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. So we did have a consultant, and we worked with ESA, which is Earl Swinson Architects. It's a local firm that has done all of Belmont's buildings, and they actually designed our old space. I have worked with them and presented with them on simulation at different conferences. So I had a really great relationship with them. And this task force that the administration tagged to be over this and to really usher it through had a representation from every discipline within health sciences, including medicine. And it was actually very refreshing. It went really well. We talked about, we went around the table. We met, initially we had 1-2-day meeting where we just put everything out there, what people needed. We dreamed really big, and then we pulled that back a little bit. The architects were there from the very beginning, which was nice. And like I said, they have a relationship with Belmont. We've known them. And so it's, that was really, really helpful. I feel like they kind of knew a little bit about simulation. They've done some stuff. There was also a nurse that was originally involved, who used to be my manager when I was a nurse at Vanderbilt 100 years ago. So I knew her really well too. And so we had a very collaborative relationship. One example is we actually went into the lab, the old labs we had that were current at the time, and we blocked off with tape, how are you going to use this space? Where's the head wall need to be? Where do your plugs need to be? All of those things. And so that was really, really helpful. And then we came over here as the building was being built, and we got to do walkthroughs and talk about things. We had a representative from the university that represented the university to the construction company. So there was kind of that 3 triangle. I was really the only one that had a lot of experience with simulation. So that was a little difficult because I really had to make sure we were directed back to the standards, back to accreditation, all those things. So, but we did align with curricular goals. For instance, we have an apartment that PT and OT are using. We made sure that there was a closet where they could hang their, clothes and teach after strokes and things like that. Interestingly enough, and if people hear this, they may think I'm being ugly, but I'm not trying to be. They put a toilet in that's like an industrial toilet, a high toilet, but we had in the plans that we wanted a home toilet, and so I made them pull it out, and they had to pull all the tile out. They weren't very happy with me, but we were really trying to meet those curricular goals. And that was just a really good example of how we tried to do that. And, I had to push back sometimes, but it was really not a bad process. I will say that we probably rode the coattails of the medical school, which was, we were happy to do it. We just held on tight and kept going.
And I think it really helped that you had a prior relationship with the architects, because one, they understand kind of the Belmont way, right? And how things go, how they're, even the procurement department works and all of that other stuff. And so that really helped to smooth things. But I think by and large, when we've talked to people that have done builds, a lot of times there is some rub there. So it's just, it's good to know. I think the other big pearl that I heard from there is the space planning. That was a big thing. I actually used a space planning tool that NLN had put out in one of their courses or something as I was going through that NLN program. And I remember thinking I would be able to fit, let's say, 10 of the beds in this new skills space. And it only ended up being 8. And so it just threw a monkey wrench in everything as far as expectations. So actually going and taping it out. And again, the architects had really good reason why it wasn't going to work that way. But I had already had in my mind how this was going to be set up in the flow, and, how we're going to be able to add students to the lab courses and all that other stuff. So I think that's another really good tip and trick for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting, Amy. So years ago, we renovated an old lab over in the old McWhorter building, which is attached to our Inman nursing building. And we didn't use an architect. We just used the kind of the construction company that did small construction projects for Belmont. And they drew it all out. And I said, oh, yeah, that looks good. And my dean looked at it. She goes, Beth, this will not fit in that space. I was like, oh, really? It won't? I mean, I just don't have that, that visual presence, I guess. And so on paper, it looked like it fit to me, but she was right. It wouldn't fit. So being able to actually tape it off, I would highly recommend that. Think about, we brought people in, stand here, you're going to be doing the nurse, you're going to be, IPE. So we did all that.
I think too, the other important part that I know we at least faced when we were working on the new simulation building was it was supposed to be a flex building. So there really wasn't a strong leader in terms of no, this is the ideal outcome. And we weren't really able to keep going back to standards in a way because it wasn't just simulation. It was also supposed to be flex for yoga was going to come in, and they were going to do night classes in there and things like that. So it was really hard for us to be able to advocate in terms of what you were talking about with the toilet, because it was just hey, no, this needs to be for these learning objectives. So we need to make the adjustment to make that work.
The flex space.
But I think having it where it's a dedicated, no, this is going to be the simulation lab and we're meeting these objectives and this is what the end goal is. It really helps you in terms of knowing what needs to happen and having leadership inside of that to, again, be able to advocate for what it needs to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thinking about budget, this is another big thing that people say all the time when you're talking about the building, but were there hidden costs or things that you weren't expecting in there? Did your budget come out to what you were expecting? I know during COVID, the construction prices rose through the roof, and some people really their entire equipment budget went towards finishing off that construction. How did it go for you all? I know obviously it was post-COVID build for the most part, but how did you do with that?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I did not have a lot to do with the budget. The entire, all the equipment, supplies, everything went into the construction budget. So we didn't really have a separate budget for things. So we pretty much got what we wanted in terms of mannequins and beds. But we also tried to be very frugal. I didn't buy the most expensive beds. I bought kind of a knockoff bed, but it works perfectly. We had a little issues with some things, but we didn't really have to think about the budget too much. Now it's a little different story where, we've transitioned to a different place. But at that time, it really wasn't. I would say personnel was probably the dominant cost when you looked at, we did a business plan, and that was one of the biggest costs, of course, was hiring the personnel for the center.
We'll get into that in a few questions. I think we had a few things about that we were wondering, because I know I even see now that you're hiring. I think you have it out on LinkedIn that you're hiring positions. So
yeah, we have one more sim ops position. So I think that they may have narrowed it down. We have a new director of operations, Matt Needler, who came from IU, who's doing a great job. And he has been kind of heading that up right now, because we're, deep in getting the education part moving, because school starts next week.
All right. So here we go, huh?
Yeah.
So do you have any advice? Again, it doesn't sound like you had to do a whole lot with the budget or worry too much about it, but where you had to negotiate for long-term sustainability within the plans, within the construction piece, or even the equipment that you guys made decisions on?
Really, we didn't. I mean, I hate to say that because it sounds like Belmont just can afford anything, but it was a part of the construction budget. We had a certain deadline we had to purchase by. I think that they did consider like contingency funds, what that might look like if things went over. I will say that I think the AV was a little bit more than they had anticipated it, and I think that became kind of a
Sure.
sticking point but I was kind of on the back seat of that. We had this, like I said, representative for the university, and I didn't tell you this, but we had a procurement company, AVI SPL, and they helped procure everything. So she went through and she got quotes from different vendors, and then we were able to compare the products, and we were able to say which ones we wanted. And we tried to be very frugal. We hired an operations director who's no longer with us, but at the time, she and I, once she came on kind of past midstream, we were able to look through and decide. We also had a vendor fair, Amy. So we had vendors come in with their products, and we had faculty from all the different disciplines. We had it for a couple of days where people could come in and look at things, and that helped us make some decisions. But we really weren't limited that much with budget. We did try to be careful,
Sure,
of course.
Sure. And then as far as operations, I mean, again, you think about now that they're doing simulations on flow within these institutions of, hospitals and things along those lines. But in simulation spaces, you also have to consider that and how people are going to get in and people are going to get out, and, how they're going from space to space to space. So were there any things that you were like, I wish that I would have done differently, or I wish that I would have considered this now that you guys are,
in the space
and functioning?
Absolutely. I would not have a key lock on any door. I would have swipes on every door, because there's nothing more irritating to me than coming and having to unlock a door when I'm in a hurry, and it's just so easy to swipe and walk in. Now, that was one thing that they kind of cut back on, because they didn't want to pay for so many, you have to pay for every line you drop and all those things. To be honest with you, I tried to stay out of some of that stuff, but like all our control rooms are locked, and when we're doing tours, which of course is weekly now, you have to unlock the door instead of just swiping and getting in and out. So that's one thing for sure that I would not do. We had a sound package that kind of got, unbeknownst to us, got pushed out in terms of sound. And so we had to go back and add some glass, a double pane glass for sound and for reflection. We had to add some sound stuff in the ceilings of some of the rooms to prevent sound from carrying from one room to another. So they did make some decisions without consulting us. So I think that's one thing, is just making sure that you're on every meeting.
I missed one. It was a critical one that I missed in the building. Yeah.
And if they don't invite you, you can't be there. And I will say, because the first and second floor of this building are kind of common space, we have the third and fourth floor, and then fifth and sixth floor is the College of Medicine. And so they were having meetings related to that, and sometimes it bled over, and I would then miss those things. And so we also, our current provost was leading this task force, and then he went into the role of provost, and so they assigned it to somebody else. So we had I was the only constant, to be honest with you, across the board, and the one that had the most familiarity with simulation. So that made it a little difficult.
I can imagine for sure. And so anything about storage, because that's usually a big ticket item too, of like, I wish I had more, or I wish I had it in a different place, or.
Let me go back about flow too, of people going in and out. One thing I didn't say is we have two really nice locker rooms for our SPs, but to get from the locker room into the SP lounge, they have to walk through where the students would be. So we kind of have a rectangle. I know they won't be able to see my hands, but it's a rectangle of 24 rooms with an outer circle or an outer kind of track where the students sign in to get their door note, etc. And then inside is the SP area. Well, the SPs have to walk through there. So if they need to, go in and out, they have to walk through. And so that's one thing I would never do. There's also only one bathroom in the SP area. So that there's the locker rooms that are, but in the internal kind of area where they are, there's only one bathroom. So that causes some of an issue. Today, the back area where our hospital rooms are is supposed to be off limits to students unless they're let in. Today, students were getting in. So, making sure that you're monitoring those things and your card access is up to date, things like that, I would say are important. And then you asked me another question.
I think the other thing that I would say there is when we build our new space, we didn't think about the fact that, again, and it goes into staffing too, but that we would need somebody right as they got off the elevator to direct them as to where they needed to go, or to make sure that they should even be there in the first place, right? And so the idea of having to think about, are we going to use student workers, or are we going to have an administrative help sit there? It wasn't the best use of our current administrator. How do we get funding for this, for this particular position? So there was a lot of even just the idea of thinking that piece of it through. They had a desk there, but nobody had a conversation about who was going to sit there, because it certainly wasn't going to be the facilitators or the SPs. So how do we manage that? So
So that's interesting. We have a desk and nobody sits there. So we have a board, a big TV or monitor that tells people where to go, and most areas are locked, so they can't get very far. But yeah, it would be nice if we could have somebody greeting people, and it's a common building. The 5th and 6th floor is locked except for to medical students, so people really don't go up there. But our floors, we have a lot of people that wander through. We have to ask them what they're doing and things. I get a lot of people that come to my office and ask where something is, or can they find a place to study? And I'm like, well, not on these floors, but there's rooms on first and second that you can study, that type of thing. So.
And on the comment about your keys, I just remembered this, but I would notoriously lose the keys throughout the day. Somebody had given me one of those like coil wristbands, and because you just put things down. Again, the keys were a nemesis for me as well.
Yeah, I leave mine around my neck because I lock myself.
I probably would do the same thing. The other thing that I was asking you about was storage space, just because everybody's curious.
Oh, yes. This is my favorite thing to talk about, because in the old center, we didn't have enough storage. And so we actually called it supply support prep instead of storage, so that they wouldn't take it away. So that is a hint to anybody listening to this. Call it support prep. And Sim Health was our consultant, and that was his idea. Michael Soropian, he suggested that, and it worked really well. We have amazing storage, y'all. I wish you could come and see it. It is
my son lives very close to you, so I will be up visiting.
I will say I have seen the storage, because I was there getting in and out the Avkin products, and so they let us go into the one room, and it was a very nice storage space.
And that's not even the biggest one. So we've got another one, and they put really cool stuff in it. They put the wire shelves that you typically see, but they're on a track, and so they move back and forth, which is nice. And then the mannequins we call the morgue, and it's in one of those library kind of shelving that you can roll the handle, and move them back and forth. And so that's been really, really good too. And then we have what we call our garage. And we have a huge monitor in there that has Teams on it. And in there, I insisted that they put a sink and that they put suction and compressed air. So if we want to recycle things, or we have a new SimOps person who's big into moulage. She's making wounds all the time. And then she can also, there's 2 big metal tables. I know people can't see what I'm saying, but there's 2 big metal tables in there, and the aluminum or stainless steel looking tables, and they can lay a mannequin on there or lay a piece of equipment on there, and Teams with the vendor to get help. We've done that several times. This isn't working. Can you help us with this? So that's been really, really great. Idea. So we love that space. And we have 2 3D printers that we just hired a new ops guy who's really good at those. So he's already started printing stuff for us.
I really like that idea with being able to get the tech support too. I think that that's something that does not, like, again, you so often think that it's like you have your phone, you're trying to figure it out, and you never have a good space for it. So to be able to have tables there with a sink, with other things that, again, you need to be able to flush things out or whatever, that's a great idea.
Well, and you're not interrupting a classroom space.
Exactly. You're not having to find a place to go.
Yeah. It's amazing. And to be honest with you, they didn't put a sink in, even though we asked for it. And that was another thing. I went back. I said, I will die on this sword as well as the toilet.
Yes.
We've got to have a sink in there. I mean, just rinsing blood out of stuff.
Yes.
And you all know, I mean, what it's like. Everybody that's listening to this knows the pain of that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's, I mean, again, the only thing I would say is that I think it was at BYU where they actually took, the tape that they put on after you draw blood? So that clingish tape?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it
Coban,
had different
stuff,
colors.
yeah.
And so like green would have been, central line stuff, and blue would have been, whatever, tracheostomy or whatever. Like they basically so they wrapped it around the wire shelving. So it was a visual real quick of there was obviously a key that was there. And I thought that was really cool. The other thing I think was at BYU as well
BYU
is
too.
the distilled water machine.
Oh yeah, we've ordered one
Yeah,
of those.
I think that's
cool.
really
We've
smart
got one
because
ordered.
again, not that it's expensive, it's not expensive, but just going out and then lugging the
distilled
water.
You always need distilled water, so just being able to have that.
Yeah, because when we didn't have an operations director for that little bit of time, I was acting operations director, and I had 12 gallons sent from Walmart to my house, and I had to load them into my car and then bring them here. And so, I get it. You said something though that reminded me. Oh, we have a SimOps guy name is Aaron, and he's amazing. He has actually on all of our shelves put a QR code, and when you scan it, it pops up the website of the item. So like if it's your Avcen item, it'll actually pop that up, and he can go in and change that. And it's also in our inventory system, which is part of our AV system.
So do they do people check out the equipment using that QR code too? Wow. Nice.
Yeah. That's the plan. It hasn't totally been implemented yet, but he's just getting it going. So
I will say that I went for several years. I started in 2006 too, Beth, but I went for several years without a SimTech. I think Amy came in 2012 maybe? So several years. And then when my current COO at Avcen, but at that time was our SimTech, she had everything organized. Like, when was it last serviced, the warranties that were done. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really smart. But, again, if you're the chief cook and bottle washer, you can only do so much. So I do give myself a little grace. But at the same time, when they come out with these ideas, I'm like, wow, that's genius. Amazing.
Well, when you get someone who's good at moulage or the 3D printer and things along those lines, again, I think that when you have team members that can contribute these really unique qualities and skills that they have, I think it's always really exciting to see how much you can elevate based off of these, different tasks that they're really strong in. I think that's always really exciting to see.
Yeah, so I never had a full-time sim ops person or a full-time tech until we moved to this building. So I had some part-time temp people that were hired, and they worked 29 hours a week. They were faculty also, and one of them was and one of them was. But it's hard, and you are the chief cook and bottle washer. And I'm sure you're probably familiar with this. This is kind of changing the subject, but the Washington State's new regulations on simulation, if you're not familiar with them, it's very, very interesting. They're requiring, if you want to use simulation to replace clinical 2-to-1, they're requiring you either be endorsed or accredited, and your people have to be CHESI or CHISOS. And it's going to be grandfathered in, I think, till 2027 or something like that. But it really, I hope, is going to help people like you and I, Amy, who suffered the consequences for so long working by ourselves. And because you can't do good sim really if you don't have those people to help you.
You can do your best, but I think at the end of the day also is like, if you truly love simulation like we do, you don't want to just check a box and say that it was done. You want it to lead to the outcomes that, that are going to make an impact on your learners and also on the status of healthcare in today's world. So the idea of just checking the box isn't acceptable. So you still do more things and try more innovative things. I mean, that's really how Avcen got started, right?
Yeah.
And so with that, your workload quadruples, but you have to fight so hard to get any support. So, definitely have lived that world. And I'm excited to hear that Washington State's doing that. I anticipate that other programs or states are going to adopt a very similar item. I always talk about, and this kind of goes into your board member role at an Axle, but the idea behind the fact that when I talked to a woman who was on the National Council of State Boards of Nursing Regulatory Committee, and I told her that there is accreditation, individual certification and accreditation for simulation spaces, she had no idea that that was even something that they could hold people to these standards. And I thought to myself, we've got to get the word out as far as simulationists that this is out there, and not just hold all of these nuggets to ourselves, because that way we will get we can advocate for this within our states and within our programs, so that the institutions can't just decide what they want to do, but they're now being held to the standards and, future accreditation. Now, we know all healthcare programs go through an additional accreditation program besides just, the general university. So it really leads us to a much better place in the long run.
Yeah, so not really related to my Naxal position, but, I helped start or helped found the Tennessee Simulation Alliance. And myself and Susan Hebert from UT Knoxville, we actually went to the Board of Nursing in Tennessee and took, these are our standards that we have now for the state, but really they haven't been updated since the study came out. And we presented what Washington State is doing. We presented other states what they're doing, and we really have been advocating for change in our state. I know KT has done that in California, and it's a slow process. I'll probably be retired before it ever gets changed, but at least you've got to advocate. And I think those of us who've been in it for a long time really understand that.
Yeah. And I think if everybody's doing their part, right? Everybody's doing what they can do. And as you said, I'll probably be retired right along with you. But the idea is that you're doing as much as you can do to advocate and passing that to the next torch, the torch to the next individuals. But getting the word out, again, it's like hiding your candle under a bushel, as the Bible says, right? Like, you can't hide it under a bushel. Let's let everybody know that this is out there, and there's so much research out there that to support what we're doing.
And I think that a lot of times we assume that people know. I think there's an assumption that this is out, that of course we know this, we're fully aware of this, but something that is always very eye-opening to me is, when we put out things about people being able to get, that will sponsor someone's Chessie or sponsor someone's cheese sauce or something like that, we get so many applicants. We get people banging on our door, and it just shows that they're not getting supported from their institution to pay for this. And so if it's starting to be required that they have this, they no longer have to keep sponsoring this themselves, which it seems like that's the commonality, that they're actually then going to get supported by their institution to be able to go forward with it. Because I think that when it comes to change, it is going to be that there has to be some movement from, the state to make some requirements to then actually have it where people can advocate to their employer about what the needs are to actually make simulation function well. And again, within the standards and within, the best practices that we know of.
Yeah, it's so true. When we had our last CC&E visit, that was one thing I was like, oh, they're going to come and want to know. And, very little did they ask. I think that's changed. It's been several years, but I do see that that's changing. But, if you're having a CC&E visit or a NLN visit, I think it's important for us to make sure we talk about what we're doing, even if they're not asking, because you're right. We have to put it out there. We can't be under that, bushel, like you said.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is to invite your state board of nursing to come and see what you're doing in simulations and talk to them about what's the latest pieces of information. What are other states doing for advocacy? Because the more we can inform them, the more they feel as though they're empowered to help make good decisions to help support us. So we did that during COVID because of our ratio of clinical to simulation was 1-to-1. And we said, please come and observe our simulations. I think you'll see the value of these simulations beyond that. And we were given, our institution specifically for our state was given the ability to do it on a temporary basis as a trial to see if that was done. But because simulation, we have standards, but there's nothing to hold people to following those standards. They were hesitant. So when we invited them, it ended up being a very positive experience. So I encourage you to invite your boards of nursing in to see what you guys are doing too, because it gives them a little education as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit, I know we're kind of out of order, but do you want to talk a little bit about your Anaxel board? What we were hoping to learn is a little bit about what compelled you to become a leader in an international simulation group, and how much commitment does it take, and what's been your experience over the course of the years? Because I know you're in the outgoing phase, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm in my last year of my second term, so they're 2-year terms.
Oh, okay.
And I'm in my last year of my term, so next summer I will roll off when the new board's elected.
Gotcha.
And I was on, I've been on so many committees for Anaxel, and I was on the accreditation committee for SSH. So I just felt like it's kind of like what we were just talking about, being in it for so long that I wanted to be able to give back to something that had given to me. When I first started in simulation in 2006, I really kind of thought it was stupid, to be honest with you. I mean, so the lady that came to demonstrate the mannequins to us, she, they were pretty low fidelity at that time. And I was like, this is okay, but we really need to be seeing real patients always. And I'm still a huge advocate for SPs because I think that's great too. But I just wanted to be able to give back. So I was on nominations and elections. I was elected to that position, and I was on membership. I've been on several different committees. I helped write one of the standards. So just my love for sharing with people, and I love to give back. You said something earlier about handing the torch. That's one of my favorite things about what I get to do. I have 2 educators that work with me that are young ladies, like in their 30s, and it gives me such great joy to give to them. One of them is actually in the NLN Sim Lead program right now. So yeah, I'm real excited for her. She's amazing. And then the other one, is getting, and she just got her Chessie too this week. So that's great. And then the other one worked at Vanderbilt in simulation in the inpatient center. And so she's now come over to academia, and she's really interested in staying in this path. And I just feel like it's important to give back. And so that's kind of why I did it. And in terms of commitment, so we have a couple of board meetings a year. We have one in November, and we have one in the summer right before conference. We have the commitment to help with some special interest groups. So the special interest group that I'm assigned to is operations and technology. I'm also a liaison to the membership committee, which is a very busy committee. It really is charged with the members' needs. And I've been very passionate about pushing that forward. And so has the committee. We had a survey this summer at the conference that we did. And in the past, we haven't gotten real good buy-in from that, or people were completing the survey. But this year we got 178, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was like 12. So I feel like, as I move toward retirement, because I'll be 61 this year, I think that's right. I'll be 61 this year. And I just feel like, I want to give something that they can take and move forward with. So we also have a weekly check-in, we call it, which is an hour. If you can be there, great. If you can't, you report on your committees. We tried to stop it for a while, but we really felt like we weren't communicating well. And I really advocate for us to keep it. If I can hop on, I do. If not, we send a written report. We have a new management agency for the last, 3 or 4 years, Smith Buckland. They've been great. So we've got great staff support. And so it's really been just a gift to me. Also, the people on the board that I have been friends with for a long time, like Mindy Anderson was on it when I first got on, and we've been friends literally since 2007. So I've got really good friends, people that, I had needed somebody to pray for me today, and I reached out to them. So it's been just a really good experience. I'm ready to step off because I want other people to have the opportunity, but it has been really, really good. And I want to stay involved in some way. I'm not sure what that'll look like, but that's kind of,
and that's one of the things of why we wanted to ask about that, because we did want to encourage other people to not feel like it's impossible for you to ever be elected to the Anaxel board. Like, please step forward and fill that leadership role, because we need people who are excited and motivated and have fresh ideas and, really want to, again, give back to the simulation world. The only
Yeah,
people
and-
I would discourage is if you don't love simulation, don't get it.
apply.
Don't apply, but you got to love
I
sim.
terrified to try to run, but I got encouraged by some friends, and it turned out good. It might not turn out good, but I would say, start with committees. Be really involved in your committee. Get yourself out there so people know who you are. I think it's been a blessing in my life.
I think that's what's always really exciting is as we start to see different groups and different support systems, it does seem like, and I think that this is just, again, as we interview different people, we just see it so much that this strong community and bond. And I feel like I've even seen that from you guys, from the Anaxo board, of you guys posting pictures together and things like that. It does seem like there is this bond of us, in simulation that want to make it improvements. We want it to be powerful. And the more that we are getting on these committees or groups and kind of going and stepping and putting ourselves out there and stepping into leadership roles, it does seem fairly consistent that people are accepting each other with open arms, wanting to support one another. And that's what I think is just so unique and special about simulation in general, is I think that we just all really do want what's best for everybody and to keep pushing it forward. And I will say that the more that I hear of different people in different arenas, it just always comes back that it's supportive. Like you said, it was a blessing. It's something where it's like you do feel like you're gaining deeper relationships with people who, again, have like-minded, in terms of how we're trying to grow it. And I think that's always exciting.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So I would just want to wrap up this podcast with kind of like any lessons learned. Like, I wish I would have known this before we got started, or I wish I had done this a little differently. Again, advice that you would give to somebody that's getting ready to start a new, younger self, or somebody that's getting ready to start a new build.
I'm not sure I want to go there, but I think the piece of advice in terms of, this new space is we did not get an executive director until we had been in the building a while. And I think that having your leadership really ironed out prior to, because the culture has suffered just a little bit in terms of, not suffer, but just it's been a transition, I would say.
Yeah.
Because, of course, I've been here, like I said, starting my 30th year and been in simulation a long time. We hired all new people. And then we had this executive director come in, and, we've been working on our mission and vision, but those things have not all been completed yet. Our policies and procedures are still kind of evolving. Those things, I would say, you have to get on the front end. Don't wait. And that would be, I guess, my biggest advice. And I would say give, but don't kill yourself either. That would probably be my advice back to my, I used to come in every Sunday after church and work in the labs and do things. And like you said, that's just who we are. But I also, there's a time and a place. You don't want to risk your family life and things like that and your children. My poor children used to have to come in and change out genitalia.
I was in those labs.
So.
I can't even tell you. Me and my sister talk about it all the time. We're like, it's like childhood memories was going into the skills lab and seeing the mannequins and helping change out everything. But again, it's also those things too where it's like, it just, in such a new industry like simulation, you can give so much, right? And so it is balancing between, love it, sign up for it, but also like, you can give until you give it all, and you got to make sure you don't give it all, right?
I think that's in academia and probably hospital practice anyway, right? They're not going to ever say, "Hey, go home, relax." So you do have to set your own limits as far as work-life balance goes, and I think, I like you, Beth. I'm getting to that age where it's like, it's not all about work, and I've got grandbabies now that I get to love on, and so. You got to spend some time loving on them and enjoying life, and don't take your computer on vacation with you. That's another.
Hard one.
That's another one that I've learned. My last vacation I didn't take it, and I didn't miss it. I didn't miss it. So
I don't know if I can do that yet, Amy. But one of my educators has been in the Poconos this week at her in-laws' grandparents or something, and she did not have her phone on, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I might have a mental breakdown." But I'm proud of this younger generation is doing a better job at that, and I really encourage them. I'm like, "No, you're done. Go home. If we don't get it done, nobody's going to die." And that's the one thing I say all the time. That's my mantra. Nobody's going to die.
I used to say that all the time. There's no emergency in education. We can
That's right.
We can cover this another time if we need to. So, and I look forward to seeing this new building in its completion. I saw bits and pieces of it, I think, when I was there, but I will definitely be, when I come to visit, I will be there in October. So I'll definitely try to stop by. All right. Sounds great.
All right. We hope you enjoyed that conversation with Beth and learning more about how she really kind of got into the nuts and bolts of everything that she did. My big takeaway with Beth is just how much of a mentor she is inside of the simulation world. She talked about her, faculty members who are now there, and she's really mentoring them, and they're kind of building up different things they're doing. But I think at the end of the day, that is something that Beth has really stood on throughout her career, is really being a mentor and involved with people and kind of seeing them through in terms of newer people inside of simulation and growing up
she can
into
really,
the areas.
really meet people with where they are, right? She can talk shop with those that have been around for forever, but she also can really help people, and does really help people who are just kind of getting their toes wet with it. She was not a part of my NLN Sim Lead group, but we have adopted her as part of our team. And we really feel very passionately that, that Beth has been a steady force in not only the development of simulation-based education, but you can see through all of her work that it's the research, it's the time, it's the energy that she pours into this. And, she has a CHESIA to prove it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think she talked about the balance, too, between work and family. And I think that is always a good lesson for those of us who can get really wrapped up in things, but also making sure that we balance things out with family and taking time to make sure that we go home at the end of the day. So I also appreciate those words of wisdom for someone who's a little bit further down.
Because probably nobody from your institution
is going to tell you that. That is for
is
sure.
going to tell you to go home and stop working, other than Beth. And I think I did it on occasion, but I don't know if I did it when I was in my academic position. But I do think that it's really important that we do consider that, and that you are setting up barriers and boundaries to help make yourself successful. And I can remember you would always joke with me, because every semester I would tell my children, Megan's one of them, but it's going to get better next semester. It's going to get better next semester. And finally you said, you know how many times you said that? Yeah. And that really was a wake-up call for me. So I understand it completely.
Yeah. Well, we're lucky to call Beth a friend, and we are so happy to have her on the podcast and learn insight from her. And we hope you enjoyed it as well. So we'll see you next time on the next episode of Simulation Nation.
Great. Happy building.